I don't go camping anymore. This happened 11 years ago with an ex-girlfriend. It actually changed our relationship for the worse, and we ended up breaking up a few weeks later. Nonetheless, I still remember this like it was yesterday, due to how unexplainable it was. My girlfriend at the time wanted to surprise me with what she said was an overnight surprise trip. I obliged and felt like I was a pretty lucky guy for her to do something that required that much planning. After packing a duffel bag full of clothes and toiletries, we left for what I thought was a resort or some kind of hotel stay. 2.5 hours passed when we pulled off of a main road and headed down an off-road path. I asked her if this was a camping trip, and she replied yes. To be honest, I was disappointed as I really didn't like camping, and not to mention, I wish I knew so I could at least pack my hiking boots. I didn't complain, of course, because it still was a romantic gesture. 15 minutes on this rough road, we finally pulled into a camping ground. The first thing I noticed was that there really wasn't anyone around us. It made sense though, this was really far off the beaten path. I was actually surprised her car made it that far out considering how harsh the road really was. Anyway, we make a fire pit and she cooks dinner. Everything is going just fine and we were really feeling each other. We of course take it to the tent as the sun goes down and we're just vibing with each other. We're young college kids, so yeah, I'm meaning what you think. But this is where the first strange occurrence happens. I hear scratching noises on the side of the tent. I try to remember if we set the tent up next to some brush. Maybe the wind is causing branches to rustle against the tent. Oh well, that's the woods. Maybe it's a bird or something else. It stops rustling and we continue chilling as if nothing happened. Then things escalate in a strange manner. It's like the wind stopped and the environment became silent. We both felt uneasy, which completely flipped our mood. She laid next to me as we tried to concentrate on listening to hear if there was a bear or some other animal in the area. Then it happened in an instant. Something akin to an explosion hit the tent tremendously hard. I could compare it to say if a log was thrown like a battering ram against the side of the tent. I say this because it literally pushed the material in forcefully and felt dangerous. A surge of adrenaline lit through my body as I felt like something violent was outside the tent. I never knew if I was a fight or flight guy, but I guess my next action gives me some idea. I yell out loud, "Give me the knife and the flashlight." As I scramble up and unzip the tent with tools in hand, my first thought was that I was going to confront some psycho that was messing with us, perhaps with a baseball bat or some kind of battering weapon. I kid you not, I launched myself out of that tent and stood up in a flurry to confront our attacker. A few breaths pass as a cold feeling sets in. I do a 360 scan to nothing but silence and darkness. Maybe it was a branch that fell on the tent. Nope, there was absolutely nothing on the ground where the thud was heard and felt. "Hello?" I yell again and again to no response, until only a moment later in the silence, a chill shot up my spine. "Get the keys and get out of the tent," I said in a frantic tone as my girlfriend listened and now joined me. I looked over at her car and noticed it was about 30 meters out by the shoddy off-road path. I didn't even need to say another word as she knew exactly what I was thinking as we both started to speed walk towards the car. You might be thinking at this point that I'm overreacting, but truly I cannot describe the terror that washed over me when I looked out into the darkness after investigating the tent. I could feel like something was watching me, and to top it off, it was eerily silent. I know she confirmed my suspicions when she started for the car immediately without question. Our instincts were telling us to get the hell out of there. The walk to the car was unsettling and felt like a football field away, but finally, we got into the car with keys in hand and I took the driver's seat. Turning the keys led to some relief as the engine started. Instinctively, I locked the doors and turned the headlights on. We sat for a few seconds, trying to rationalize what was happening when my girlfriend started exclaiming, "My laptop is moving. Something is in the tent." She said this because she brought her laptop to serve as a lantern after dark. We of course left it in a hurry as well as other items. I saw what she saw. It was items being rustled around in the tent. Without further hesitation, I put the car in gear and started down the rough road. As I tried to calmly drive the car down the dirt path quickly but carefully, the strangest thing happened. A loud, piercing, ringing noise came from inside the car's cabin. I turned the radio on and off. I checked the windows. I asked my girlfriend if her car had ever made such noises, and she replied no. I asked her again if she could hear it, as maybe it was just me being under stress, and she said, "Yes, I hear it, and I don't know what that is," in a confused and panicked tone. Now, I wanted to write this off as a car problem, but if you were in there with us, you would describe it as some kind of bell continuously ringing. It didn't sound like any car noise I had ever heard. My next instinct, as I grew up as a pastor's kid, I just remember praying for 10 minutes as I was convinced it was a supernatural or demonic event. We endured the screech for 10 grueling minutes, and to my relief, it ended suddenly. It didn't fade out or go quiet. The loud ring literally stopped in an instant. I can't describe the feeling in that car when it stopped. It's so strange to look back and remember that I felt that the ordeal was over once the ringing stopped. Everything felt normal again. The panic, the chills, all of that went away in an instant. We went up down the road another 45 minutes and finally stopped at a trucker diner. We slept in the parking lot, or at least she did, as I was still on edge from the adrenaline dump I just went through. An attempt at bravery, the next day we went back to the campsite as the sun was up. We investigated but saw no tracks or anything except for the contents of the tent tossed around but still accounted for. I was hoping they were missing so I could write it off as people screwing with us and plundering our tent, but that didn't seem to be the case. We were packed up and gone in less than 10 minutes as the area still felt weird. I haven't been camping since. I would go again, but the next time I go camping, I'd want an RV or at least a relatively known location with others around. This place was the remote mountains of Payson, Arizona, far from civilization. Creepy guy hanging around on holiday campsite. Over the summer, I booked a glamping trip in the next country over. The website looked beautiful, a campsite of 6 large yurts outside a lovely little village. Coincidentally, I had driven through that village before, as it's close to a really nice historic castle I like to visit occasionally. So, we pay our money, and my husband, 2 kids, and I pitch up. It's one of the last weekends of the summer, and it was lovely weather. The campsite was on a small hill, and the people who owned it lived on top of the hill in their farmhouse. We were checking in on a Sunday for 2 nights, as we were shift workers at the time. We passed other people checking out, and they all looked happy. The owners of the site showed us down to our yurt, and mentioned that we were the only ones on the site for our stay at this time, it being a Sunday. We were happy with that, to be honest, because with 2 young kids, it meant they could make as much noise as they wanted, and we wouldn't really disturb anyone. When she showed us around, she did say the yurt door didn't lock, but none of them did. Which, okay, fine, because you don't really lock a tent anyway, right? The place was in its own mini wooded area and was absolutely beautiful. The owner also mentioned the kids would be safe to wander because they had perimeter fences because of their dogs. The first night was really fun. We had a barbecue, the kids played around for a bit, and then we all went down to sleep at about 8. I found it hard to sleep, but I often do somewhere new. There was only patchy phone coverage, so we read until we fell asleep. Next morning, my husband seems a bit out of sorts, but I asked him if he was all right, and he was all, "Yeah, I'm fine." So I left it. We went out for the day and had a great time. Whole day was blazing hot, and then we got back. While I was washing up for dinner and the kids were playing, a shadow came over the entire place. I felt eyes on me, and it went really cold. Honestly, it felt like something bad was going to happen. I felt dread hit me. We'd already paid to stay, but I pulled my husband to one side and said, "We have to leave right now. I don't know why, but I've just got a bad feeling. Please, let's just go home." Normally, he'd try to talk me out of something like this, but he didn't. He started getting the kids together and I packed our stuff. We went to the farmhouse where the couple who owned it were sitting outside playing with their dogs. My husband started loading up the car while I apologized to them and explained we needed to leave because our youngest was feeling ill. They said how sorry they were about it, and then just as I turned to leave, the man owner asked me if my husband had been outside the house last night around 3 or 4 in the morning. I said no. He hadn't left my side all night. I would have woken up. He asked me if I was sure, and my husband was right by my side and answered that no, he hadn't, and why. Well, says the guy, the security lights came on and the dog started barking. And when we looked outside, there was a man wandering around, who then turned and walked back down in the direction of the yurts. They assumed it was my husband. We both said it wasn't and said our goodbyes quickly. I tore out of that place in the car, and then about a quarter mile down the road, my husband turned to me and said, "You're right. I was quiet this morning. I didn't say anything because I thought you'd think I was joking. I wanted to use the bathroom in the wee hours, but as I was about to get up, I heard footsteps on the decking outside. Not hooves or something on 4 legs, something on 2 legs. I lay there as quiet as possible and hoped the kids wouldn't wake up or something. The whole atmosphere that night still disturbs me, even now." Horrific night camping. I was a 19-year-old female at the time. I love camping. Anytime my friends and I came home from college, we would load up our cooler with beer, grab some gear, and go screw around outside. Unfortunately, when I was actually at school, none of my sorority sisters or other friends ever wanted to go with me, so I would often suffer withdrawals from camping. One day, the weather was way too nice to waste, so I grabbed some of my gear, hopped in a car I borrowed from a buddy, and drove to a spot that was secluded yet still in distance of civilization. Camping also creeps me out sometimes, but that creepy feeling is also somewhat of a plus for me. I make a little camp and get a fire going. I hadn't brought all that much to eat, but I was enjoying myself, reading and looking around the area, that sort of thing. While just relaxing, I stopped dead in my tracks because I got the feeling I was being watched. I hear a twig crunch over to my right, then see a doe boat from about 30 meters or so in front of me. I laughed at myself and went back to the camp with an armful of wood I had just gathered. I kept freaking myself out, hearing sounds just outside of the ring of light cast by the fire. I always get inside my head, so I shrugged it off and kept whittling at a stick I had been messing with. Around 1, I decided to go into my tent and snuff out the lantern. I had been slamming beers down my stomach and smoking cheap cigars. Another reason I like camping. I can act however I want. So I passed out relatively quick. About an hour later, I start hearing footsteps. They sound pretty light and sort of timid. I think to myself that it's a deer or other animal. Likely a raccoon because I had probably left some food out. I'm still on guard though. About 30 minutes of sleeping with one eye open, I hear a rubbing noise, and the tent fabric is being pushed in a bit. I don't know how I didn't shit my sleeping bag, but I just sat there, paralyzed with my combat knife in hand. I desperately wanted to thrust the knife through the tent fabric, but I was still holding out hope that it was some of my buddies from a frat joking with me. And then as suddenly as it had begun, it all stopped. I was starting to feel slightly more secure because daylight would be coming in about 2 or 3 hours, but I sure as shit wasn't going to get any sleep. A couple more hours passed and I realized I should put my boots on so that if anything did happen, I would be ready. After having stayed up and keeping alert a little while longer, my friend's car alarm goes blaring. I freak the fuck out and run out of the tent. I got about 2 steps before something grabs me around the mouth. I open my mouth to scream, but instead the person's finger slips between my teeth. This freaked me out even more, and I had a huge rush of adrenaline, and I just chomped as hard as I could, and there's no way to say this without sounding ridiculous. Their finger popped off. He screamed, pulled his hand away with the missing digit falling to the ground. He took off running down the hill I was camping on, and I took off in the opposite direction. I must have looked ridiculous to the people whose house I ran to. A little sorority girl in a tank top, boxers, and steel-toe boots. I also had some blood that had to ooze out of my lip, not from the finger, but Big Sad managed to take a pretty good chunk out of my lip as well. I told them what happened. They called the police, got me some real clothing, and the man at the house got me something to drink. When the cops got there, they checked it out. When they got back, it was light out. They brought me back so I could get my friend's car, and what I saw just terrified me even more. Right next to the tent was a red gas can. He could have just lit me on fire earlier. The finger was also gone, suggesting he had come back. The kicker is, they never caught the guy. So somewhere out there is a man sitting down to dinner, maybe alone, maybe with a wife and a couple of kids, and he's missing his right pinky.